Well, first of all, Keehan, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thank you.
It's great to have you. We've had lots of cool conversations. I've known you for a while, and it's our conversations are always pretty awesome. And we've hung out and had some weird times that I've always appreciated. And I've always thought it'd be cool to just have you on here and talk so other people can hear us.
Yeah.
And now we have an excuse because you just took some kind of crazy adventure and some travels, and I'm going to ask you about all that in a little bit. But we were just talking about you just finished Meditations by Marcus Aurelius.
Yep. Just finished that.
A translation, more of a prose translation, right? Not
Yep.
not quite so
Not the
verse.
full. Yeah.
Yeah. So what did you think, man?
Well, I would say there's a wealth of information in that book. Lots of Stoic practices to take from it. Really, he just had a very good grasp on, I felt like, what his reality was and how to encounter difficulties and overcome things, and just really a smart guy, philosophical, just a lot to take from it. And
Yeah, I agree. One thing I always thought was interesting is like if you read it, you're like, wow, this guy's bright. It's brilliant philosophy. Clearly, this guy is a empathetic human that really gets morality and care for people and is fair. And I'm like, yeah, I've seen that before. But this dude was a political leader, a ruler of a empire.
Yep.
Like you don't usually hear rulers of empires and extremely ambitious people talking like that.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, these are notes to himself. It wasn't notes he was publishing to anybody. So this is himself telling himself, "You're not that cool, man. You're not that great. Remember, you can get better. Your emotions will lead you astray." Like how crazy is that? I mean, this guy he literally had cults worshiping him as if he were a god. And the notes he wrote to himself are like, "You're not that cool."
Yeah. It's like,
but nobody would have disagreed with him if he would have said, "I am this cool." You know what I mean?
yeah, it's like
It's special, I
almost the
think.
practices of mindfulness and just realizing everyone's the same in different ways, but how you interpret someone just because of your perspective isn't always true, I guess. Everyone has their own life and what they see and how they live it, versus, say, he was very grounded and just mindful of everyone and everything he was doing. He had developed practices to overcome challenges, and just different ways about that was very insightful.
Yeah, and he was always trying to overcome himself first, and then the obstacle or
Yep.
whatever. And some great insights come out of that. I imagine a lot of his greatest moves as a leader were because he didn't have his feelings and his ego and his like power hungry type of thing getting
Yeah.
in the way of.
And you would expect that from someone ruling such a vast nation at that time, was the superpower almost.
Yeah,
So to be that humble and also powerful, I feel like is what probably led him to be successful.
yeah, I think you're right, man. Would it be cool if all of our nation leaders in the world right now were like that? I mean, to seek the truth and seek to speak the truth always.
Yeah.
Just that alone, man. If we could just get all leaders to do that, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I still feel like I have a lot to go over with the book. Just reading through it once is not enough. And like mainly taking away key points and what I took of notes help, but I still feel like there's so much more to it to even understand and take away.
Yeah, you're right. I think I've read it 4 times in my life, and every time I read a different translation, just kind of for fun. But every time I read a different book, and the book's the same, but
Yeah.
I'm not the same. It really is. It's one of those that hits on a level that's a little deeper than the surface, and really like how you interpret it, what you get out of it has so much to do with how much experience you have in life. It's
Yeah.
crazy that way.
Yeah, I can see it as in when you read it, you're comparing it to what you're dealing with in your current life, and then you're going to take away those aspects versus it's so it's not like any English book you would read, or it's very almost hard to explain how he uses his words, and you have to really think about it through each sentence and everything. You can't just read it like a normal book.
Yeah, it is like, it's very introspective like that. It's not telling you a story. It's making you look inside and ask a question.
Because mine was just, I don't know how all the translations are, but it's just, each chapter or each book is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to like 20, 30 verses or paragraphs of, specific things that he has encountered and how to deal with them. And it's just a lot to look at.
Yeah. Thankfully we have it. It's crazy that it's all still very poignant today. You know what I mean? It's crazy because it's really old, but it's all still applicable. Like,
no doubt. Yeah.
And it's interesting that anybody would write in that way. Like, it's not real specific to context.
No.
It's not like this is how you put the wheel on a wagon. It's
exactly.
Like
there's no step-by-step way to follow his writing. It's almost what you can gather and take from it, and then do some introspection in yourself, and then really that's where the learning comes from.
Yeah, and how you read it, you're right, how you read it matters, like the context you're putting it in while you're reading it. And one of my favorite ways to read it is like, well, Stoicism was quite a bit before Marcus Aurelius. After Plato, Socratic times and Platonic ideas came about, and then there's a lot of school of Greek thought, and Stoicism kind of won out, and that was kind of where we went. And then I feel like Marcus Aurelius is like Stoicism applied, like what can this get you at the highest level, and what does it mean? And that's a fun context to read it in.
Still have a lot to learn with the origins of Stoicism and the people, where they came from, how they came to be, because I feel like that is a whole different journey in itself.
Yeah, it's remarkable, Stoicism. How much of today's culture and everything successful among humans is like built on top of Stoic and Greek ideas from that era. It's unbelievable, really. Like almost everything that we value now just came from that time.
Yeah.
It's very curious. It's very curious.
Sure.
I don't know. But you said you were listening to some podcasts and doing some different stuff, and you just traveled to North Europe.
Yep.
So tell me about this trip. I haven't had a chance to ask you. I've been saving it for this podcast, so this will be my first time hearing of any of this. So where did you go?
Went to Slovakia is where I was staying at my hotel. Went for job training for the new battery plant here in Kokomo, and we're dealing with producing the battery slurry there. So it was Monday through Friday, full-time training, but the weekends is when I had to explore, and ended up going over there, and it was Easter weekend the first week, so we had a 4-day holiday with Monday and Friday off, and that gave us a lot of time to get out and explore. But the training plant was in Hungary, so we were just on a border town just in Slovakia.
Okay.
But we went to Austria, the Czech Republic, and Poland on top of those 2 countries. So 5 different countries in a span of like a month, basically.
Oh, man, that's cool.
Yeah.
I saw some pictures you were putting out there and stuff, and it looks like you really got into exploring some things.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a big thing I like to do, is just get out, explore. I don't want to sit around and waste time in the hotel or whatever. I mean, always on the go, moving. There's so much to learn there, and the culture is just something else too. Everyone seemed very nice, whether they didn't really, or if they couldn't communicate or didn't necessarily want us to be there. Sometimes you could feel that, but they were still very welcoming, and just great people over there. The whole culture.
Really?
Yeah.
In Austria and general Slovakia and
Oh
everywhere
yeah,
you went.
everywhere really.
Yeah.
They were all fairly welcoming. You could tell in Austria when we went to Vienna, bigger city, and people were on more of a fast paced, point A to point B, get whatever they're doing done. And definitely a different vibe there, but it was still very cool to see.
Yeah. Man, that sounds cool. I haven't been to any of those places yet. I do a lot of traveling. That's definitely on my list.
There in Budapest, we went probably 4 or 5 days out of that trip.
Oh, yeah?
And that's just a massive city. There's so much culture there, so much to explore.
It's like sprawling, right?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's a lot of those buildings have been around since like 1300.
Yeah, they don't go up to the sky.
No, they're just
out over.
maybe 3-4 story buildings,
yeah.
but
Love
all
to
of
see
it's
it.
like stonemason architecture and just so much old age, like I guess I don't know what the proper architectural term is, but
Beats me. Cool.
yeah, just cool.
Yeah,
like
that's what it is.
the cathedrals and stuff. We went to St. Joseph Cathedral in Vienna, and that was just like a massive church.
So that would have been Christian, right? Like God.
I think it was Catholic.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, we're talking.
Yeah, Christian based.
Sure. And I always find this interesting. I always go to a church in every country I go to, and there's Catholicism and Christianity reached the whole world, most of the world. But each one of the churches are amazing, and they're different architectures. Like one will be like Gothic period or whatever. Was it like that?
I would say so. Yeah, more like that. I mean, high vaulted ceilings with a lot. I mean, they were probably 50-foot high ceilings in that cathedral we went to, and it was, nothing of like what you would see around here. I mean,
that's cool.
Definitely worth getting out of the U.S., going to experience what the world has to offer. There's so much more than what we see here, and really a lot to learn.
I know that's right. And you were talking about the different perspectives you got to hear. You mentioned that you'd talk about podcasts and different things that you regularly talk about here or listen to here.
Yeah.
But doing it over there, you got to hear that there's different perspectives.
Yeah. What
was that like?
It was really interesting. We actually ran into a Chinese native guy staying in our hotel and had like a 4-hour long conversation with him, and he's been trying to get in the U.S. for like 15 years, and he was currently staying in Slovakia as a barber, but just him explaining how difficult it is to get over here, and like some of the stuff he was saying about China and like Russia.
You mean come over here legally?
Legally,
yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, and it was just kind of blew me away. Like he translated and said that he thinks China and Russia is the cancer of the world, and like
the Chinese
the government
thought
basically that. He really supports America and the freedom we have, and that really gave me a different perspective, because like you probably just see a lot of propaganda that they're doing great and this and that, but when you hear it from someone else who's like, they don't care to lose 1 million lives in war versus America, he said losing one means so much to him. And like, maybe it's not quite that exact way, but when he explained it that way, and like we do have it very nice here.
Yeah, and we kind of take it for granted.
Yeah,
as a people.
That's kind of how I thought. Like, we do take it for granted how nice it is here.
That's such a great gift to be able to take for granted, that most people care if you die, to start with. And if you listen to a lot of like Islamic fundamentalist, Islamic extremist cultures where people have defected, that's the first thing they always say is they come to America and they can't believe that everybody cares about their life, that they have a life, and that they should keep it.
It's odd. It's like
I'm like, what?
You wouldn't think that we really take that like all the war we go through and different things, but
Yeah.
we really have it nice here, I would say.
Yeah, and I've been to a lot of countries, and you can find people in different countries that will talk shit about the U.S. Like you can find people talk shit about anything anywhere. And I listen to some of the criticism. It's, some of it's accurate, some of it isn't. That's fine. I don't defend too much of the states necessarily, but occasionally I'll stop people and be like, all those things you're talking about culturally that go wrong, those are mistakes that Americans have the freedom to make. The reason you have these things to talk shit about are because there's a whole country of free people who are allowed to go out and do stupid shit.
Yeah.
And find out
It's
that
like,
they're not subjugated.
we do have a lot of freedom, even though sometimes it might not
be a great
It
result.
might not. Yeah, I guess that's something you could say is like a lot of it lets things go kind of rampant in a way that you might not want, but you have to have the freedom to be able to have everything else, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Sorry, I kind of derailed you there for a minute. You were telling me about he was a Chinese national? He was still a Chinese citizen?
Yeah, he was still, as far as I know, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And he was just on whether it was a work visa or, I don't think that. I think he had actually just left China to get out, but I don't know how that would work.
Yeah, I don't think that's allowed, is it?
No. So I really don't know his whole origin story in that sense, but he was just a very pro-Trump person. He really made that explicit, which was kind of funny.
This is the craziest story I've ever heard.
I mean, he was like, yeah, he was ecstatic about Trump. It was pretty funny, but
yeah, well, that's interesting. It just goes to show you can't count on any assumptions to be true.
Yeah, it was a very good conversation to have with him, and just talking about the politics of war and what's going on, and like, of course, we were having to translate everything through the phone. He spoke a little bit of English.
Shit, you did all that through translator?
Yes, it was.
I've done that before. It's rough.
He was just very happy to talk with us and meet some Americans, it seemed like. And
really?
Yeah, it was
That's
really
cool.
An odd experience, because we were just out at the casino and it was like 12 in the morning, heading up to our hotel room, me and my friend Tyler, who went with me on the trip. And we walked past our supervisor sitting there talking with this guy. And he's just like, you know what, come back to our room. Let's talk and have some drinks. And like, I was already ready to pass out tired. And we ended up staying up till like 4 in the morning talking. So it was like pretty
great,
out
dude.
there.
Those are the best experiences, man. That's the best part about traveling.
Because you wouldn't expect to run into someone like that, especially in the region we were in. Mostly like maybe some Ukrainian refugees and like mostly just native people to where we were staying at and going, not really seeing a whole lot of different culture from, I guess, China. There wasn't too many people like that. And to run into him and actually have some deep conversations was pretty insightful and definitely gave me a different perspective on how, I guess, the world works and whatnot.
That's cool, man. To get that from a different corner of the world is excellent. And I found this to be true. Maybe you found this to be true. It's so interesting. It's hard. Sometimes it's kind of difficult to people close to you to get into deep conversations all the time. You get in these habits of kind of keeping it on the surface level. But when you're traveling, especially internationally, and you meet other people, for some reason it seems like it's easier to have these deep conversations.
Because I feel like you're not going to run into that guy.
Is that what it is? There's no risk in it?
Maybe that's what it is. But I end up adding them on Facebook and stuff, and I plan to keep touch with them a little bit here and there, but that's just really interesting.
It is. Yeah. I enjoy it. So in the area you were at, was there a vibe about the whole Russia-Ukraine war and stuff happening around there? Was it a topic?
Well, I wasn't really talking to people specifically about that, because like our manager made it a good point to not bring up anything U.S. native stuff. Don't wear anything showing American
Oh,
flag.
really? Yeah.
Because he told us there were Syrians staying in the town we were in, and they are like very, very against the Americans. So like, you say one wrong thing, you could end up in the back of the van,
Oh.
being taken away. So like, he made it a very strong point to not talk too much about that, which it would have been interesting to get some insight onto that, but it's also, you got to be safe and
Yeah.
watch what you're saying, because like,
Sure.
it's interesting.
But it wasn't such a big topic that you heard it all around you or anything.
no.
Right on. That's interesting. So what was your favorite and least favorite thing that you saw or did while you were over there?
Well, the least favorite thing was just working throughout the week while we're there, not being able to
Yeah.
get to fully explore. But even then, I say I had a lot of opportunity to do stuff. So
That's great, dude.
yeah. I guess the most emotional thing we went to was Auschwitz, and just getting the energy from there was so hard to explain. It's so much grief has went through that place, and just seeing all the artifacts and stuff they had there was like really humbling. And to imagine that over 1 million people had been executed there through various forms of torture, the gas chambers, starvation, and like they pulled people all over Europe just to go to that one concentration camp. And that's not even, there's a handful more, because 6 million people were executed during that like 2 or 3 year span. And it was just like so much grief had went through there. It's
unbelievable, really, man. Like at our age, well, you're younger than me, but at my age, you hear about that a lot. We were educated on it. You get re-educated on it. You hear about it. I'm old enough to where we actually got like the political and ideological warnings about it, like things to not do in your life to ever let this sort of thing happen again. So but I still can't wrap my head around it.
No.
And it's still like extremely, man, it's
words
impossible
can't
to
describe
put,
it really. It's
and you saw it with your own eyes, felt the energy, walked the grounds.
just walking through the gas chamber alone, that was, you just almost get like a very overwhelming feeling in your body of like, I don't even know, anxiety, multiple different feelings all at once, that it's overwhelming. You don't even know what to think when you're looking at all this. It's like a lot to process, really. Seeing the luggage that they had, all the shoes, the human hair was probably the craziest thing. That was very sad to see. It's just,
They still have a bunch of hair. They kept it.
yeah, they kept, probably a few 40-yard dumpsters full of hair that was on display.
So came off of people, man.
And it's
That's
like some of it
crazy.
was like 2-foot long locks of braided hair, like just so much. Not even fathomable how they could even keep that, let alone
Do that.
have it on display still.
Yeah, why do you think it's all on display? You think it's clearly nobody's proud of it. Hopefully, but is it a good reminder, or is it just to have history present?
I think it's really a good reminder to people that see it. They do not want to go through that, you would hope, and it really just shows how chaotic of an event in such a short time span things can really take a turn and go wrong.
That's a great point. And there's always something that sticks out in my mind that I feel like I should point out to people when I hear them talking about it, because you kind of get sold on this idea that the Nazis were evil, and all of them were out to do evil, and so they collected all the Jews and they did these things. but maybe they were evil. I don't know. But for sure, they thought they were doing good.
That's the crazy
They
thing.
had
is
an
like,
idea that they had been taught, that they believed, an ideology that led them down a road to where they thought by doing those things they were doing the end of the ultimate good thing. So it really makes, I think that's the real warning. That's the
Yeah.
real reason you should read Marcus Aurelius and test your ideas and
Yeah.
find out if they're, have your own sovereign ability to decide for yourself what's good and bad. Not let ideas capture you and fester in you and
Yeah.
not well, one thing the Greeks were good about is warning about consorting with the crowd. Just because there's a lot of people that say something's a good idea doesn't mean it's right. It just means there's a lot of people that think it's a good idea. That's all it means. Do you think those are good warnings to take from the Austerwitz the deal, or do you think I'm just talking shit?
No, I would for sure say that it's a lesson to go there. Really, like a life lesson for people to see that and hopefully take away that they would never let something like that happen. But talking with my coworkers and friends that went with me, it's like you said, they probably didn't realize the aspect of what they were doing, and they thought they were doing it for their own good. And it's like, what you think you're doing in life, you might be thinking you're doing the right thing, but you have to check yourself, like you said, and really see, are you doing the right thing or whatnot?
Yeah, how do you know?
Because you don't. I mean, you only have your perspective of what's happened to you and what's going around on the world. And
but if you ask, you can find out. You can seek a little bit. I think that's the trick, right?
Yep.
If you catch yourself being a person that doesn't question yourself, I think you're in danger.
Yeah, and that's when you fall into I feel like a rut in life, when you don't question yourself and try to keep improving and coming up with new ideas. And just a growth mindset really is what's powerful today, is to continue growing and learning from your mistakes and just trying to take new lessons from life, I guess.
Yeah. Listen for them. That's a good point. So did you try some beer over there?
Yeah.
Some good beer?
Yeah, it was cheap beer too. Like,
yeah.
I mean, stuff ran from like $1.50 and up for a beer. Like, that's pretty nuts to think that. I guess around here, what costs are in America, I don't know. Like, you're looking at $4 or $5 for a beer usually, and like you'll get the same thing over there for $2. It's like,
that's cool. And it's definitely not an exchange rate thing. Like, a lot of those places, are those places on euro, or they have their own denominations?
Mostly euro, but Poland had the Politsky, I think is what it is, and then Hungary had forints, which was a different currency, but mostly euro from where I went.
Yeah. So I think the euro's still a little more valuable than the dollar, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so $2 in a euro-based economy, that is a cheap beer. That's a good deal.
Yeah.
Especially for a good one.
Yeah, it's something. I mean, I guess I wouldn't expected that. A lot of the food was relatively cheap. I mean, still around the same cost as here, but you could get a meal for $5-6 if you wanted, or you could go get a fancy dinner and it'd be only like $30-40 tops, with a couple drinks and a nice fillet with like a nice salad and whatever sides you'd want. But it's really, the food there is something else too. I mean, you can tell a difference. Yeah, for sure. I'd never really had a lot of gyro stuff, like the lamb meat and different stuff like that. Yeah. That was, a lot of that was prevalent there, and that was really good food. So.
Yeah, that's, is that Greek in origin?
I think so,
I think so too. Yeah, certainly. I love that kind of stuff. I love trying new food.
Side shops and stuff you could go just on the side of the street, like food stands and whatnot, that had pretty much the same food you'd get anywhere else. It's just like onto what you want to eat, really.
Like street vendors.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that.
Hamburger,
They warn you
cheeseburger.
they warn you not to eat from street vendors and all the travel warnings and stuff. But I do it anyway. I love it.
No, I think they have some of the best food, honestly, from my experience over there. Now, I didn't try a whole lot in the other countries. Most of that was in Slovakia where I was staying.
Mm-hmm.
But even their McDonald's, their Burger King, that's all different. They don't have the same sandwiches. I mean, they have some of the same stuff.
They have
but
quite
as
a bit of
far as-
franchises over there still.
Mostly McDonald's, KFC,
There's some McDonald's everywhere, bro.
Yep.
Dude, I went to the deep south in South America and near the Amazon in this small little town. And, man, I mean, there was goats walking around in the streets and shit. Like, we were way out there.
I think there was a Pizza Hut, too, so that's another. But we didn't end up going there. There was a lot of good Italian places, like.
Well, my point was I walked out into this town square, and this whole thing was like this, homegrown village at the bottom of some mountains, and right there in the middle was a KFC.
Yeah.
Kentucky Fried Chicken. I was like, how did they get out here?
It's so odd, because it's
fucking
like,
weird,
why
dude.
are you guys here?
Yeah, exactly.
We tried the KFC once, and I wasn't too impressed. Like, it was just, the chicken was good. I'm sure that's pretty much the same, but like their sides and stuff, like their mac and cheese was definitely odd. They put, Hungary's known for their paprika, so they put like a ton of that in there.
The mac and cheese.
Yes. So that was odd, and it was really dry compared to like you get like creamy mac and cheese over here, and that was like, what is this stuff? I couldn't even eat half of it. I was like
we're getting American fast food companies in foreign country reviews right now. It's great, dude. So they basically take the franchise and then try to make it like the home flavor
custom
a little bit.
to their people, but it was always busy.
I don't know why I think that's so funny. It was busy though, huh? They liked it.
Yeah, they like it.
Yeah, I always wondered that, because in America we love like foreign food Americanized. Like we go eat Mexican food, we go eat Chinese food, we go eat all these. And from my experience, the American version of those things aren't really close to the authentic versions. Usually, Mexican get pretty close. But I always wondered, if I go to these other countries. When I was young, I wondered this: would there be like an American restaurant? And I could go in there and there'd be like these cheeseburgers that aren't really cheeseburgers. They still taste like pho or something.
There really wasn't a whole lot of like Americanized vendors and stuff.
Thing.
No, it's
except for franchise.
Yeah, other than that, but there wasn't any Walmarts or Targets or stuff like that. I'm sure they might own some of the grocery stores. Like there's a Lidl, a Billa is what it's called. There's a few different stores, but they're pretty much the same as what you would get here in the U.S. So it's nice that they still have all that available.
Yeah, that's cool. So what else, man? What about the scenery, the views and stuff? Was it cool nature?
Oh yeah.
See some good landscape.
We went to Hallstatt, Austria, and that's on a big lake in the Swiss Alps. And it's a town that's been around for, I think, over 1,000 years. So it's old architecture, but a lot of it's been rebuilt and modernized still. So just crazy to see a place that's been around for so long and being in the mountains. That's one of my favorite things, really, just going out, being able to explore, see nature. Still had snow top on the mountains, so
that's cool.
Yeah,
there's almost everybody from around where we are is attracted to some kind of landscape that has elevation or whatever, because it's so flat here.
Yep.
It's so great every time I leave here, which is often, but it never gets old. I'm like, oh look, the ground goes up.
Yep.
It's crazy. It's so nice to look out and see something.
That's like probably one of my favorite places out in Utah. Being out to Salt Lake City
Yeah.
and then going down to Zion National Park. And I've been to the north rim of the Grand Canyon as well.
Wow,
So
yeah,
that's
great.
I mean, that's something else. If you're used to Indiana, I mean, you got to get out and really see what the world has, because there's a lot more than just these farmland fields. And I guess you can go south and get some of the rolling hills that's a little bit bigger, but
Yeah, Indiana has some neat stuff to offer too. But whenever you're in a place, seeing something different is cool.
yep.
Yeah, like you can't hardly beat an Indiana spring in a forest. This is it's one of the world's biggest seasonal forests. It's just old, it's great.
Yep.
But it sure is nice to go to a place that's different,
Yep.
The Swiss Alps is very different.
Oh yeah. I mean, I wish we could have went up a little bit further into them, but still where we went was beautiful, really.
How'd you get around? Were you doing bus and cars, or did you get on any trains or anything?
Trains a lot to
Yeah.
like Budapest and whatnot, but other than that, we had a rental car, so that made traveling a lot easier, having a car. And just going around by that is even cool because you get to see a lot of different scenery if you want to stop and look, whatever, get out at the rest stops, check out different places. It's just, I think that's the way to go. But also the trains, they just take a long time, so like you can be there twice as fast in a car,
Yeah.
which they're still fast trains. Like most of them go up to 100 mile per hour, so it's like you're still moving, but
Yeah. But there's the whole process of stopping at all the stops.
yep,
and,
that's what I was gonna say. Just to get to Budapest from where we were, it was
Yeah.
like an hour and a half train ride, but there's probably over a dozen stops.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I did that in Central America once. I took a bus somewhere, and about 2 hours into it, I was like, I'd rather walk. I would rather walk. It was like, you stop every 10 seconds.
yep.
And
that's
then
basically
they even
what it
stop for the
was.
people that yell and wave in the bus. I was like, it's going to take us 4 days to get there. I could probably jog there faster than this. So the buses in Central America are out for me. But
Yeah.
that's great, man. It's crazy. At all the things I've done and traveled, I've never, ever stepped foot on a train.
Really?
Never. I've always wanted to.
That's
Just
surprising.
never happens. It never works out that way. Strangely.
Yeah, because I mean, there's trains up by Chicago, so that's pretty surprising you've not even
Yeah.
been up there and like, oh, let me see, take this train or whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to live in Detroit, and there's a lot of people who take the train, and a lot of my people I lived with took the train to places, and I was supposed to get on a couple of times. It's so strange. It's like I was meant to not get on a train.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought it'd be cool though to go to Europe or somewhere like the Swiss Alps and hop a train and just watch the scenery float by.
That's something I wish we would have done, but time is kind of the killer for us, as we only had the 2 days on the weekend, and taking a train ride that's probably 8 hours to get there from versus the car, it was like a 4.5 hour drive.
Oh
So
yeah, every hour matters.
yep.
Especially when you're weekend warriors.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Man, so how you ended up on this thing's a pretty cool thing. Like this whole battery plant explosion industry
Yeah.
is super interesting to me. Like overnight, there's like all these, like probably like $1 trillion of investment nationwide, worldwide, I don't know.
For
And
sure. I mean,
all of a sudden, all this stuff's happening. And we have huge battery plants just going up in the middle of the night near our city and stuff. And then they start collecting all this labor and stuff. So tell me about this, man. What do you think about all this?
it's interesting. I have like conflicted ideas with it just because of who knows how it's going to play out on the environment and like the workers working in the factories, and how safe is it really as far as like carcinogenics and different stuff for like cancer, that is a little worrisome, not knowing, because it's not been around for
you're
a
worried,
long time.
You're worried about because it's new and it's moving fast and it's
Yeah.
not highly. You think it's not regulated necessarily, or we just don't know?
We just don't know.
So you view it as dangerous.
Almost, but
yeah, could be.
it could be. But I guess the idea behind it is to move forward from the combustion engines and move forward with technology, really. So I feel like there's a lot of opportunity with it, and it's just the beginning. So who knows where it'll be in 100 years or whatever. It could be completely different.
Yeah, and it turned out to be a great opportunity for you at a really great time.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. Just getting out of the 5-year relationship, took the job offer. Probably wouldn't have done that had I had the house and had a dog, had a lot of other stuff that I would have to attend to. But getting out of that just gave me tons of opportunity, and really everything being paid for by the company and getting a decent per diem, it really didn't set me back any to take this trip. In a sense, it really led me to grow.
Yeah, that's great, man. You can't beat that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think about the idea that if Trump or somebody else gets elected, they'll shut down all the electric stuff? To me, that seems silly. That fear. Everybody's always afraid of some catastrophic shit.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I really haven't thought about that aspect too much, so I guess anything's a possibility, but if it is
so
a
people
shutdown,
people aren't talking about that then around you.
not really. A lot of the people are looking at the long-term growth of it and stuff, but like I was talking about, the cancer potential and stuff on the environment, that could play a role if they find out that that's a problem, and it could get shut down. And
yeah, I don't know. I don't think big companies have ever cared too much about that.
But then again, it's like the process of making batteries. You have your cell phone, you have computers, like pretty much every technology we use involves some form of a battery nowadays, and like I just don't see that going away, honestly.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's real interested in that. People only really care about cancer after they get it. It seems like.
Yeah.
And we do
Could see that.
It's shitty that way though, because unless we can be like, okay, this thing causes cancer for sure, like at least 20% of the time, people just don't heed the warning.
Yeah.
Like cell phones may cause some kind of cancer if you use them in a certain kind of way, but we're not really sure, and we're definitely not sure exactly what percentage.
What it's doing.
Yeah.
Like,
so people are like, blah, 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 I'm going to use my phone.
Yep,
I'm not going to hear
yep.
that shit. It would be too big of an inconvenience to worry about it.
Yep. I guess my main thing is losing my dad to lung cancer. I want to be conscious of, where things can come from, and
yeah,
if you're not conscious of it and you just don't care, I guess that's when it'll bite you. So
yeah,
that's
a good point.
Something to be concerned with. I don't know how bad it will be for the environment or what big hazards there are to face, because it's definitely something to talk about, though.
Yeah. Do you think it, I mean, obviously we don't know, but generally speaking, is it, the same or more or less impactful than like the same size plant making like transmissions or engines or?
Yeah, it's pretty similar to the same size, I would say.
Yeah. Do you think it's pretty similar in like environmental and health impact? Or are you saying there potentially could be worse? Because those factories have killed lots of people over the generations.
It could potentially be worse, because a lot of this new battery stuff is dealing with like carbon nanotubes and fine particles and how that might play on someone's health unless they really step up the production on, I guess, the engineering side of how things are built and manufactured for safety. That's a big concern, I guess.
I didn't know any of that. So anything else about your trip and your adventure that you want to share before I ask you other stupid questions? Anything stand out?
I think that covered a lot of it, really. It's just a great experience, opportunity-wise. Couldn't pass it up, really. That's where I was at with it.
So in general, you'd recommend if there's anybody to travel overseas to other countries?
Do it, for sure. I know it's expensive, so that's a setback for a lot of people, but if you can figure out a way, get out, even if it's in the American, or like going to Mexico or Canada or somewhere even as close as that, just getting out of your hometown can really change your mind, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. Our country on its own is huge, and each state is like a European country.
Yeah, for sure, because you can drive, an hour or two and you're in another country. Or even with my case, we were walking across the border from Slovakia to Hungary here and there just to go to the train station. So it was like, it's very easy to just get around there. It wasn't as controlled as I thought it would be either. We didn't get stopped at any borders from the 5 countries we went to, and I think that's a perception. I thought that we would, because I didn't get my passport stamped other than when we flew into Zurich, Switzerland. So I guess count Switzerland being there too. So
interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. There wasn't.
It is interesting. Like
you don't even realize you're driving into another country until my phone, I had a day pass on it and it'd say, "Oh, your day pass for the Czech Republic is now active," and then next thing you know, you're in Poland, and it's like, wow, I didn't even realize I just drove across the border.
Yeah, those European countries, though, they've had a long cooperative time of you couldn't separate the borders in Europe like that, like we do here.
Yeah.
They really have to work together, cooperate, most of them. And they, a lot of them share the euro.
Yep.
They share an economy, and I think they share a lot of rules too.
For sure.
They just stamp it. It's an interesting. Europe is an interesting cooperative project to me.
It is. It's so interesting that there's so many countries that's in the space of half the United States. It's you don't realize it, I guess, until you're over there and you see how fast you can be to somewhere else.
Yeah, that's right. When I grew up, I was reading a lot of English conquest, in the Heart of Darkness, and French conquest, and all these things, and the empires that took over the world and stuff. And then I got a little older and to look at the map, and I'm like, this tiny little thing took over the world.
That's what was
so
pretty
weird.
Profound to me about Auschwitz, was that little place was able to pull millions or 1 million people from all different nations. Even
a lot.
Yeah, it's they were not stopping at anything to do that. It's just really wild.
It is wild to think.
Because there was a map that I think I had taken a picture of that showed all the different points of where they pulled people from, and it's wow, just really, and all the different nationalities. I mean, it just wasn't Jews that they were taking. It would be Hungarians. That was the actual, at Auschwitz, I think 500,000 Hungarians are what they took in. So whether they were Jews or not, I think it was still
just
almost a
genocide.
culture war. Yeah.
Yeah. Just fit it right in that convenient infrastructure they just came up with.
Yep.
That's fucked up. I'm really worried about something like that happening again in the future.
Yeah, it's a possibility, but
Yeah, I see a
you
lot of
just
bad ideas going around right now, which I've always seen bad ideas. That happens in a free country. But to see them catch on like they have lately and go too far, that kind of scares the shit out of me. Not enough people willing to speak their mind with cancel
well,
culture and all that.
and talking to that Chinese native about how the stuff that goes on in China, like, it's so strict over there, and like you can only do so many things. It's not anything like it is here. And he explained Russia kind of the same way, and like saying how they're the cancer to society right now. And it's like, wow, you know,
That's interesting.
they
I
can't
never
have
know what to
any
think about any of that.
religious beliefs or anything like that. Like, if you bring up the Bible or something, you're basically going to get executed, is the way he made it sound. So it's like,
I feel like I need to go look for myself because I hear such conflicting stories. You know, well, first of all, China's a big place, like the
Yeah.
U.S. It's a very big place with a lot of cultures, different cultures, varying cultures in it. And, you know, they're the source of, like, Kung Fu and the I Ching and the Tao and all of this incredibly open-minded, spiritual,
yeah,
free, sovereign person type of stuff. And then I hear, you know, I hear people talking about positive things in China. Then I hear people talking about how oppressive, and it's like, well, which is it, you know?
yeah, it's
And
hard to make up your mind. And
Yeah.
it could be like the
Could be
U.S.
both.
where, you know, you go to California versus here, it's totally different ideals and beliefs.
Yeah.
And
I mean, there's some things we know for sure. Like, you can't criticize the Chinese government if you're in China, and you can't.
yeah,
I mean, maybe there's some you can get away with, but you definitely can't, like, take them down.
yep,
Like in the U.S., technically, legally, constitutionally, we can take people out of government office, put new ones in. We have say so. Like, we know those differences exist, but I'm not sure about the rest of them, exactly what's happening. I don't trust my own media or my own government to tell me what's happening in China because they're always trying to sell me some shit for some reason.
and that's where it's like, what propaganda do we see in today's culture that we don't realize is propaganda?
Oh, yeah.
What we think is the way. And that's kind of like talking about the Nazis, how they thought they were doing
Right.
humanity right. Well, what ways are we
That's right.
doing something?
Thinking you're the exception is the most dangerous thing you could ever do.
And you won't even realize it probably until it's too late. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah, wait till, I don't know if this is true. Wait till we find out we all, like, funded a war that was a genocide. We just didn't know because we had a shitty leader.
yep,
They lied to us and we believed it. Yeah, it's kind of why I want to go look for myself. And I feel the same about Russia. You hear a lot of bad shit about Russia, and there is a lot of bad shit, I'm sure. It's a big country with a lot of bad ideas, but that explains every country. But then you hear people go there and they come back and they have a lot of positive things to say too.
yeah. Because it's
So-
like their culture and what they're doing in their mind is right in the same way we are here. So it's like, you go there, I'm sure if you went to Russia, it would probably be a great experience, and like, it wouldn't be all this negative, bad stuff that you hear about, because it's all conflicting information from what I take from it. So it's like,
Yeah, I don't know what I would find out.
I don't really
wanna
see
see for
them as
myself.
bad people because of what they've went through and what the U.S. has done to them and push their boundaries. You know, you're gonna fight. You're gonna do what you think is right.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. That's why I want to see for myself.
Yeah.
I wish it were that easy. That's interesting.
And then what source of information you get it from plays a big role too. I feel like, you know, whether
Yeah.
you talk to someone who's high up in politics or you just talk to
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
everyday normal person, you know,
Yeah.
you're gonna get two different stories. So
Yeah, no doubt. Speaking of, are aliens real?
oh man.
Have you heard Why does this keep developing? Like, why is this such a thing now?
I don't know. I don't know if you listen to Tucker Carlson and Rogan. They
I
had
just listened to that today,
some
actually.
pretty,
I had a drive, and I was like, my wife played it. I was like, yeah.
yeah, they talking about aliens there. There's a lot of different ways to think about it, really, whether you think it's some foreign thing coming into our atmosphere and that being something with super advanced technology, or whether it's an energy or a spirit or something that like he was talking about. And that really changed my perspective on it. And it's like, well, maybe that is kind of the way aliens are perceived. It really, I don't know. There's a lot to think about in that one.
It starts to blur the definitions. Tucker was the first person I've heard publicly suggest that these UAPs and UFOs and things that we've documented but can't explain may in fact be spiritual beings, spiritual entities of some kind, or supernatural. He does say supernatural later. Like, either way you want to look at it, whatever definition you like. And I don't know, but I do know that anything that you don't know, you have to consider what possible explanations there are, and that is a possible explanation.
Yeah,
it's no less possible than than aliens or whatever other people say.
I really haven't made up my mind on it, because it's like I try to be very open-minded to
and there's no
all
evidence.
Different aspects of it, and it's like, well, it's cool to think about like flying saucers and all the stuff with like Area 51. If you've heard of Bob Lazar and like
The Secret,
the guy that worked at Los Alamos Labs, and
secret labs and shit,
like talking about how he's seen the crazy propulsion systems they had and how it works off of gravity and different things. Like, well, do they have that actually, or is he just making it up? And like, I don't know. You really don't know, because
another thing I want to see for myself.
Yeah, it's one of those you have to see. And who's to say there aren't multiple forms of what someone would say is alien?
Yeah,
that's kind of what I think is like, yeah, there probably is the spiritual side of what someone would say is alien, because there has to be something that's playing a role in that.
I see what you're saying. Like, it starts to blur the lines of definition, and that sort of leads you to the path that we've all experienced on enough mushrooms, that there's no actual separation between things, and there's like an animated spirit already in all things.
Yeah.
And all explanations just become one vibration. Like, you can't go too deep, or else you end up with the fact that, well, everything's spiritual. It's a supernatural phenomena that I opened my eyes this morning, and I could see myself looking back at me. Like that, that's just as spiritual as anything you could ever describe with a definition.
Yeah, for sure.
And nobody can explain it to this day.
Because you can't explain any type of trip, whether it's mushrooms or DMT or LSD.
That's one thing that's interesting.
You can't explain that.
Science has zero explanation for consciousness or experience. Two dark holes for science.
Yep.
And science admits itself that it cannot describe or explain anything that it doesn't have any evidence or understanding of. That's how science works. It doesn't speculate. It's not a belief system. It's not supposed to be. It kind of is now. And it doesn't know shit about consciousness or experience. I mean, it can only describe maybe things that happen as a consequence or a precursor in your physiology, but that says nothing about consciousness or experience.
Yeah, especially when a person goes on a high dose journey of like mushrooms or something. That's so profound, the experience that you can have in that realm of wherever you go, that's not in your concept of what's reality, I guess. It's very profound, and there's a lot of insightful things that can happen, and like, it can be a rough experience for a lot of people because it brings up a lot of thoughts and stuff you don't want to think about, but you're faced with it. You have to deal with it. You have to push through it. And a lot of it comes down to intention based. I feel like, what's your actual intention for taking that substance? And you know, some people are just doing it to party. Some people are doing it to, you know, get out of a rut in life and improve. And like, I think it's not wrong to do it in the party sense, but also having that deep introspection, I feel like, is profound for sure.
Yeah, well, it is. And anybody who's ever done it, you know, people who haven't done it will just say, well, you're just hallucinating. But anybody who's ever done it they have an experience that's very real. And that's an interesting thing about consciousness. What evidence do we have that it's real is just how the experience feels. Like when you wake up from a dream.
Yep.
The only way you know that when you're awake is because it feels more awake than the previous state.
Yeah, because you can wake up from a dream and have full-blown anxiety and like whatever you were feeling in that dream, you'll feel for a few minutes, but it fades away.
Right, but how do you know what you woke up? What makes it more real than the last state of consciousness than you were in? They're like, there's no evidence of anything, so it's just
who's
experience.
To say it does? Yeah.
Yeah, so when you take psychedelics, you can have other experiences, and some of them are more real.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Than this one, in the exact same way that waking up from a sleeping dream is more real.
For sure.
So that's something that science can't tell you about.
It's
not yet, anyway.
Profound. It really is, and I think the culture's finally coming around to some of the science-backed studies that are coming out, like Paul Stamets has done with lion's mane, psilocybin, and niacin, which the combination of those three have shown significant improvement in cognition capability, just having a true sense of feeling with your body, understanding what's going on, and like he's doing genuine trials that are with the placebo and basing them off that, and you see a whole lot of improvement and stuff that I guess you wouldn't expect, you know. It's really something that people, I guess, take for granted too once you've done it.
Yeah, it's wild. I do like Paul Stamets' approach, you know, like he's into the science. He does his best to be rigorous, but he's not too hung up on figuring out why something works, just figuring out what works.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I love that approach.
Because we don't know why they work and exactly how they work, but we do know that it does have capabilities to work with, you know, depression or just a growth mindset and like stuff like that. It really, I think if you have the right intention of use, it can be very helpful.
Yeah, well, there's evidence for that, no doubt.
I would say it had a deep impact on my life, you know, getting into that and like just learning about the profound effects it can have. And like, I would say it kind of like saved me in a sense of maybe going down not the wrong path, but not the path that I truly wanted. So like,
psychedelics saved you. How so, you think?
Really, I would say it got me over a lot of stuff that I didn't know I was dealing with or didn't want to face.
Well, it brought it up to the conscious level.
Like, I would say the biggest thing was like with my dad's death when I was 8. And like there was a lot of stuff that I didn't really consciously know I was feeling or like had those feelings in the back of my mind, and working through a lot of that was pretty profound. It really helped me out, I guess.
A lot of people say that about trauma.
Yeah,
they
sure.
say it's great for that.
It has a lot of, it just really can take you in a deep, dark place in the moment, but working through that, trying to understand why you're feeling those feelings and just almost letting loose from them and detaching those negative feelings you had. And like,
It's crazy how fast it can work.
yeah,
Like you can accomplish in one good trip what would take years of work otherwise in this limited
even
version of consciousness.
even like microdosing and taking small amounts of, say, mushrooms, that can just in your daily life let you open up and really feel like you're living. It almost,
You think so?
yeah, I would say
Micro
so.
or just like small dosing?
Anywhere from micro to small dose.
So I've done micro dosing. I didn't notice much.
I wouldn't say micro dosing then. I would say where you're at the sub-perceptual level or
Yeah.
like right,
like a quarter gram,
yeah, plus,
half gram.
yeah.
Yeah, but when you go to like the 0.1, the micro, so you can't feel anything.
Yeah, I guess that's not, I'm talking what you're saying.
Okay.
More
You
like
could feel it a little.
where you can
Yeah.
feel it for sure, and like maybe you'll get a slight perception change in your visual field, but nothing that's substantial to like, oh man, I don't want to drive, or I don't want to
Right.
necessarily, you probably shouldn't drive anyhow, but
Yeah, just in case.
yeah, but
yeah, right.
it's that aspect of when you're feeling that uncomfortable feeling, in a sense, that it can bring upon. I think working through that with like anxiety, or like I've always struggled with like public speaking and just being outgoing, so like that's really helped me try and break out of that shell. So yeah,
That's interesting.
it's really something, because like I was always told, as a kid, I was very outgoing. I would go up and talk to people, this and that, and like I never really could. I mean, once I was a teenager and past, since I think my dad's death really set me back, but in a way I didn't realize.
Like
and
you
that's
got
like one of those,
self-conscious.
yeah, and one of those like things that it brought out of me and like made me really think about and get past it, I think. I mean, it's still something I have to work on, but
Yeah.
it brought light to me that this is what you're dealing with and why you're dealing with it, and you know, trying to figure out how to deal with that and work through it. I think it's a very profound thing.
I agree. I've seen it myself. I don't have that particular experience, but I've seen it a lot. I actually went to this. That's a long story I'm not going to get into, but I went to this place in the Amazon. It was absolutely legitimate. It was not some tourist stop, where there was people from all over the world, just a few at a time, would go to this native area, Satchawasee area, and they would. There was an incredible doctor there, an American guy that would help people with the process and integrating. He worked in psychology.
Yeah, I think you told me some of your story. But
Oh, that's
yeah.
right. That's right. Yeah.
And like,
the point I
dude,
want,
that was
insane. And I'm not going
Yeah.
to get into the whole story right now because it's insane.
it's deep for sure.
But there was a lot of people with tremendous trauma, man, that I felt bad even being there, honestly. I was like, man, I don't deserve to be here. But, you know, there's always a part of me that's like, maybe I'm just hiding my trauma too. You know what I mean? People say that. They tell you that.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a neat, I'm not going to get into the biggest part of the experience, but one part of the experience that was useful for me is it affirmed. I went as deep as I could go, and I leaned into it as hard as I could lean into it, and I know for sure I went all the way. I have reasons for that I'll get into sometime. But I couldn't find any trauma there, which is affirming, which is also useful.
yeah.
It's not that I didn't find anything I didn't need to work on or some truths about myself I didn't realize. Those things were all useful. It's not like I found out that I was perfect or something. I found out, you know, lots of useful things. But it was interesting to find out, yeah, for sure. I did deal with terrible things in my life appropriately, and they aren't really a problem for me. So that was useful. But man, I've seen with my own eyes people with trauma that I can barely comprehend um, have significant improvements in their life.
Yeah,
Is
that's the biggest
It
thing.
looks like, when you see it with your own eyes, it looks like some kind of goddamn miracle. You're like, there's just no way that this is so useful for people. But it is.
Yeah, and I wish it wasn't so looked down upon, honestly, because there is so much useful things that it can really bring out of people that
It's considerably safe considering how powerful it is, like comparatively. It's not like it's 100% safe.
no, and you can
But
still, like, if someone takes too much of anything, they might not come back the same person or have the same thought pattern, same thought process. Maybe not so much with mushrooms, but I've heard some cases with like LSD where you do too much and you can pretty much fry your brain in a sense.
yeah, well, LSD, man, that's a synthesized from ergot, which is, it's probably, if not the most powerful substance on the planet. It's very, very close. It's very tiny amount. It's very potent, and you can way overdo it real easy. Hard to measure too. Mushrooms is a little different. If you're going to take a ridiculous dose of mushrooms, you're going to know it because you're going to be chewing on mushrooms for a long time. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's a little harder to overdo it. You can do it.
And that's same with DMT, I would say. It's almost like a mushroom trip, like a high dose mushroom trip broken down into 10-15 minutes is the way I would explain it to people. It's very overwhelming in a sense, but also you come back with the same ideas. You can go into that same spiritual space and see a lot of different things, I guess.
Yeah. I've never done it. That's next on my list, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think? What was it like for you?
Oh,
Just wild? Impossible to explain? Ineffable?
kinda, yeah. I mean, it was just very, I would say, overwhelming, but also like it grounded me. Like I felt like I was able to breathe deeper than I ever had before, and like almost every time I was breathing in and out, it was like just a new life force entering you. And like I haven't really taken time to like take some notes and really like put out a kind of like my full thought process of going through it, but it's something else. It's really, you'll just go to a different, I don't know what you'd want to call it, like a different realm really. And like,
Yeah.
whether you experience entities or experience a god or whatever.
Do you bring stuff back from DMT, like a lesson, sort of like mushrooms or acid or?
For sure. Yeah. And it's all on the intention too, I would say. Like some people could do it, oh, I just want to go see some crazy colors and whatnot, but I don't think that it's necessarily that case, because like,
yeah, I've never thought any psychedelics are the right drug for people looking for like this sensorial experience. I get why people think that, because it's in like the same category as other drugs, and most of them are sensorial experiences of some kind, you know. But psychedelics are not like that. That's the worst reason you could ever take one.
and
If you want to see pretty colors, get
Yeah.
smoke some weed and put on some funny glasses or something. Don't
Yeah, you
take
don't
acid
need to
for that
do that
reason.
because
like
it's just too long of an experience for
It's
acid especially. Like,
it's deep. You can't explain to people how deep it is. It's deeper
Yeah.
than you've ever gone before
I
in your
mean,
life.
you're essentially going out of body if you do, depending on how much you do. you're leaving this human form and traveling in your mind to a completely different place. Like, whether it's, there's really no explanation for it. It's like, it's almost the feeling of like being God, like you have said before, like really just
Yeah, I've went to the
fully one with yourself, and just that sense of feeling like you are who you are, you know?
yeah. Yeah, the connectedness between all things. The lines start to blur. And I've, my most intense experience in the Amazon, definitely I spent about 35 minutes real time, I call it real, but 35 minutes this time I spent completely beyond body, beyond ego, beyond reality. Reality fell apart, and I was just, everything was completely gone except for a consciousness. But it wasn't me. It was just this universal everything consciousness. I was the entire everything. And what's strange is that, I came back from that. There's a lot I could say about it. I won't. But one interesting thing is, up until that point, I always thought that consciousness was a result of physical. It never occurred to me that consciousness would be more fundamental than the physical world. And now it seems incredibly obvious to me because I've experienced it. And it's incredibly reasonable and logical, and it's in order. And
yeah, I mean, one of my really profound mushroom experiences was, I mean, doing more than a person would really fathom doing. Like, it's when you take that much, I basically went through what felt like from birth to death, like living a whole life.
Oh, yeah.
In a couple hours, or something like that. Who knows? But from doing that gave me a humbled sense of feeling, and like also like not worrying about death anymore, and like it is what it is. You're not going to control that.
Yeah. That was the greatest lesson from mine, because that particular trip I'm talking about was also the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. And the way mushrooms come in waves.
Yep.
Yeah, man. So like I would have to die. Like my whole ego would have to die. My body would have to die. I'd have to let go of reality. All that is so painful. And you try to hang on to all of it. And and then
once it's stripped away, it's like
I finally give up, but then the mushrooms would ease up and I would reassemble all of that. And then they would start to kick in and I would go through that dying process again. Yeah. And your perception of time has changed, like you were talking about. So each time this happened was between like 2 years and 8 years of experience.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
It's no different than this time. You experience
so hard to
every second.
Get people to grasp, but it
years.
is. It's like
I was gone forever, like 100 years probably on this trip. Real years. They felt second by second.
And that's kind of one of my more profound doing DMT was whenever I came back from that trip, it was like I was able to replace all my thoughts and like think of everything and like reassemble my ego to who I wanted to be, in a sense.
Yeah, right.
Or at least what you think you want to be at the time. And like that was like a really easy moment to let go of things, but also I wouldn't say easy, but because it's a hard experience. But coming back and reassembling my ego just sounds crazy, but it's like I'm able to tell myself who I am, who I want to be, and where I want to go.
And you realize it's always been that way.
Yep.
But you never realize that until you take enough psychedelics. It's always been that way.
You have to go really deep.
Yeah, you were the one that did it in the first place. And then you start asking questions like, well, who am I? And then you realize you're it, man. You're everybody.
Yeah.
And that's, until you experience that, you just sound like a complete psychopath when you say it to other people. It's a strange thing. And in my trip, I finally got to the point where I just completely had to surrender. And in that moment, you know, you just kind of remember when you're in the universal consciousness, remember who you are. And the realization comes back, and then there is no time. And it's such a fucking wild experience, man.
It is.
And then you don't want to come back. At least that was it for me.
I mean, and when you're coming back, you're like, where am I going? And then next thing you know, you're back in your own consciousness, and it's like something else, you know?
Yeah, that one was a fundamental shift for me. It took me weeks to come out of it. Like weeks to reassemble shit. Like people would be talking, and I couldn't tell if they were talking or if I was talking.
Yeah,
like I'm
no
not
kidding.
I couldn't. That separation between things took me a long time to fully reassemble.
Yep,
It
and
was
that's where it can be. I wouldn't say dangerous, but on someone who's not fully, I wouldn't say conscious, but aware of themselves, it can be I guess that is a downside to it.
It sounds terrifying, but I wasn't scared. I was terrified and awfully. If I had a bad experience, of course, it's a difficult experience. Up until that point, I got into the universal consciousness, or whatever you want to call it, samadhi. I have no idea. These words don't mean anything to me. That experience meant something to me. As soon as you get there, of course, there's no fear.
And what I have to say is like the bad experiences, or what you would say is bad, or what people want to call a negative trip or bad trip, usually those have been the most profound to me, where I learn the most. I am able to take away a lot of deep things from it, and like those are the hardest ones. But you know, if you take some and you're just having fun, whatever, hanging out, it's not the same, really. You don't quite get the, I want to say, full experience.
Yeah. I'm not sure which one's better. You know, when I was younger, I thought, you got to get the set and setting right so you don't have a bad experience. And now I'm like, the bad experience is where it's at.
Yeah, really. And it's hard to say that to someone.
Yeah, because nobody wants to be uncomfortable.
No.
Right.
And that's the thing. Like, once you take that much, I mean, you're probably going to be uncontrollable sweats. You might be crying for no reason, you know, just tears streaming out of your eyes, like whether it's happy thoughts, negative thoughts, it could be just no thought.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It
crying.
just could just be, oh, I'm crying, and then or laughing uncontrollably. That can happen. Like, it's almost an overload of emotions.
Yeah, I found it useful just to really pay attention to what's happening and let it reveal why.
Yep, that's, I think, the best thing you can do.
Because you can get like an overwhelming fear feeling that will not stop coming. And you could think about that whatever judgment way you want to judge that. Or you can just look at it curiously. Be like, why? Okay, this is what I'm doing. Why am I doing this? Where is this pointed? Yeah,
and I think that's where I've taken the most away from it, is just dealing with those negative thoughts. Like, just coming over those is the hardest part, but also the best.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that, I don't know, I don't like calling them drugs, but the psychedelic drugs, they're also, it's not like the drugs themselves are intuitive, but what you do with them in your brain is intuitive. Like if you're a person that's not courageous and you're very afraid and you don't go very deep in your introspection, they don't usually make you do that. I've seen people eat quite a bit of stuff and be able to stay pretty close to the surface, reject the whole thing. I think if you take enough, you won't have a choice. But you know, for most people, taking a regular dose or whatever, you get the choice to how much you want to lean into it and how far you want to go.
For sure.
Which is super interesting. I mean, can you name any other drug that you can decide in your mind how strong it's going to be for you? That's such a weird thing.
It is. It's hard to explain.
Yeah. But you can lean into it and change it.
It's interesting how it all works, because like no one knows, like you said, really. I mean, they can look at different aspects of the brain that are activated and whatnot, but they don't know why and why it's working the way it does. And it's just interesting, very interesting. And that's,
Yeah, that part is interesting. There's no consciousness in your brain, as far as they know. They can't find it, but it exists nonetheless.
yeah. And even other functional mushrooms is pretty crazy. Like as far as cordyceps, lion's mane,
Turkey tail.
yeah, turkey tail, reishi. And if you heard about the agarikon species that Paul Stamets is working on with like vaccines and like how people will get sick and feel bad for a couple of days, well, the turkey tail with the agarikon that he's come up with and done a bunch of case studies, that's, I guess, alleviating those symptoms and whatnot. And they don't know why it's working and how, but it is working. And it shows like a 90%, like, I don't know what the proper term, but it's working, you know?
Yeah, I saw that. I think that not only they were expecting it to make the symptoms not as bad from the vaccine, but what they didn't expect was they did a 6-month follow-up blood work on those people, and their immunity was still up.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
dramatically more than the people without the mushroom treatment, which is crazy.
Yeah, and like turkey tail,
I take that regularly.
You can find that anywhere pretty much.
Yeah, it's growing all over the place.
Yeah, it's one of the most common species of mushrooms that grow, but it's something, you know. There's a lot of power in these organic materials that.
Yeah, and there's like hundreds of millions of mushrooms and we don't know what.
I mean, they're always finding a different species every day.
It's crazy that we haven't really looked into them much, honestly. Considering how much we've looked into plants for coming up with medicines and things, mushrooms are a completely different thing than plants. And they're super fascinating. And I think the fact that some of them can kill you really just made people not fuck with it at all.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
But that's not a good policy because...
Well, like, look at big pharma and stuff. Like, that's a whole nother story of, like, how crazy most people are just fed these pills and drugs and whatnot. And, like, how effective truly are they, you know?
Yeah, well, don't get me started. I'll get canceled because I'm not a big fan of
neither am I.
medications.
Like, I don't know if you know Wim Hof.
Yeah.
Yeah, like his ice baths and deep breathing work, stuff like that, has shown to, like, mitigate cancer in, like, young children and stuff. It's like, it really makes you think, you know, what...
Yeah.
What can we do?
I'm not anti-drug, but I'm real like pro short term. If you really need it for some reason.
Yep.
Yeah, and I like to use drugs for immunosupport, implicit or explicit reasons. Like, I took cough medicine the other day because I was on like day 8 of COVID, and I had a cough that wouldn't let me sleep. So I didn't take cough medicine because I was uncomfortable. I took cough medicine because I needed to be able to sleep to support my immune system to get better.
Yeah,
I feel like that's a good use
proper
of medicine.
way. Like, I know people that just take ibuprofen, Tylenol, like, every day essentially, and it's like, well, at what point is that even doing anything for you? Why don't you address the root cause of your issue?
Plus it desensitizes you, like, when you need it.
Yeah, it's not gonna.
There's a tolerance. That's not good.
Yep.
Also, whatever it's doing for your body, there's a good chance that if you do it regularly enough, your body will get even worse at it, doing it on its own. That's always a thing.
The only time I really take medicine is, like, say I'm really sick and I would need an antibiotic, or sometimes I'll get migraines and I'll take some Excedrin migraine relief, and, like, that works, but that's on a rare occasion that I'll be using some substance like that.
Yeah, that's kind of what the standard I use with my doctor. My doctor will be like, okay, well, here's some prescriptions. And I'll be like, all right, doc, which one is there a chance that I'll get worse if I don't take? And they'll tell you the truth if you ask them. They'll be
Yeah.
like, oh, you really don't need these other ones. These are just kind of.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot with like
Yeah.
they'll prescribe hydrocodone and a lot of painkillers when you really don't need them, you know?
Yeah.
And even if you tell them, "Hey, I don't think I need these. I'm doing okay." They'll still prescribe you them. So it's like,
Yeah. And I've even put off antibiotics before, which I'm not recommending anybody do this, but like there's been things where I felt like my immune system had it whipped.
yeah.
And the doc's like, here's some antibiotics. And I'll tell him, like, do I really need these? And the doc's like, no, but you really don't want to wait until you really need them.
Yep, that's
And I'm like, that's
what they'll say.
a really good point. But,
But then you get used to that and you don't let your body actually
yeah, so I'll give
do
my
its
body
thing.
another day. And I'll be like, actually, I got better than I was yesterday. So I'm going to skip it. I take the risks because I know that's like, it's kind of like weightlifting for your immune system, right?
Yeah. And I think that just takes being conscious of yourself and really,
Yeah.
being aware
And that's
of what
real.
you're putting into your body.
That's right. But antibiotics is a really bad example because they're pretty safe. There are a lot of drugs out there that just aren't safe. But especially if you take them every day of your life for years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
But they're being advertised to you as if they're safe. That's concerning. Or it's become culturally normal. Maybe the advertisement doesn't say it's safe. But the advertisements come on. I don't watch TV, but I know they exist. They come on, and then at the end they'll tell you all the ways it's going to make you shit blood and your nipples fall off and everything else. But nobody listens to that part. They go to the doctor.
A list of 30 different
Yeah.
fatal things that can happen to you, It's
Yeah, you're
like,
going to puke up your kidney and all that. You're like, nah, I'll be fine.
yeah, and that's like a whole different topic too. Just like, who knows like what birth control or these SSRIs and
I'm going to be honest, I don't
different
like any of it.
No, I don't either.
I don't like any of
I
it.
don't think it's good for people, and I think it's just a fast, quick remediation, or what they think is, whenever really, if you actually were to sit down and deal with those things, I guess not in a,
Maybe I don't want to assume like it would be.
yeah, I don't know.
I don't know, man. But here's what I know: that those people that have, there's a lot of things people have. They do need something and to help them. I'm just not sure the shit on offer is all it.
No,
I think
there's other ways. I feel like
it's
to
almost
overcome.
it's almost like snake oil scam.
Yeah,
Sometimes
kind of what
like
it feels
this
like.
person really needs some fucking help, but you really don't have any safe help to offer them. But you're going to offer them this one anyway. You're going to hurt them in 100 other ways to make this one thing feel better. I don't know. I don't like it.
No, and it's there's a lot to it that I don't understand, and
Yeah, and I don't.
I just try to stay away from them.
Yeah, me too. I'm not a doctor or a biologist or a chemist. I'm definitely not a pharmaceutical expert, so don't listen to me. But it would be nice if pharmaceutical companies would be. I think it would be nice if we were confident they were looking for the best possible holistic way to heal people rather than just the most profitable one.
Yeah,
If
for
I felt
sure.
good about that, I'd be like, okay.
Yeah, that's a crazy thing with cancer. I heard that per one patient's like over $1 million in cost, or what they make off of a cancer patient. It's just like, whew.
Yeah, why would they want to change?
Yep, that's kind of what I think too.
Yeah. I think very highly of service providers. I still give all doctors the benefit of the doubt. These
Because
people,
they're doing what in
Yeah.
their perspective is right, and even
yeah,
they're doing their best to improve lives of people.
I trust those people as much as I can. I don't trust CEOs of pharmaceutical companies. I don't think for any. I don't have any evidence that they actually give a shit about me
No,
at all.
it's money.
Yeah,
I think a lot of money.
Yep. Yeah, that you certainly can't trust them as much as your doctor. And sometimes it's worth just asking your doctor a couple of questions. Obviously, you don't want to harass the shit out of them and make them tell you all about every medication under the sun. You can, but you can ask them simple questions like, I mean, do you really know how safe this medicine is that you're prescribing me? And most doctors, they have a sense of responsibility. They'll tell you the truth. They'll be like, oh, I read one thing on it. Maybe I'll look into it for you more,
Yeah.
you know?
It's
Or they'll tell you the other truth. Like, yeah, actually, I've given that to people for a couple of years regularly. All good results. You're fine. It's worth asking. I would trust a doctor. I don't trust an advertisement.
no, it's something for sure.
Yeah. But I see you were riding dirt bikes.
Yep. Finally got back on a dirt bike after what's been 5 years, I think. My friend let me come out to his property and ride one of their bikes, but
That looks fun, man.
yeah, it is. It's a dangerous sport too, but it's also probably the most physically intensive sport there is, honestly. Like, I mean, maybe you could compare MMA and like martial arts stuff like that, but as far as how brutal it is on your body and just how much energy it takes to get on a bike, and if you're riding like on a track or riding for a prolonged period of time, I mean, your hands are going to be locking up, your forearms are going to be, you'll get what's called arm pump, and like you basically can't move, like even just to let go of the bike. Your hands are almost locked to it.
Some
Like,
lactic acid
it
build
can
up
be,
in there.
yeah,
Yeah.
very intense. Probably definitely the most intense sport, in my opinion.
Man, that's crazy. That's probably why motocross guys are always ripped.
Yeah,
I mean,
you
they
have
are.
to be.
They're always
You have to be.
lean and ripped.
You have to be. Like,
That makes sense. That reminds me of, like, I always thought surfers were ripped just because it was like part of the surfer culture. You know, I don't know why. I thought that. I didn't put much thought into it. And then I went surfing and I was like,
yeah.
I get it now. This is hard as hell. I mean, it is physically
A lot of core strength and a lot of
paddling
lower
against
body,
yeah.
upper body. I mean, everything, I'm sure.
I bet motocross is exactly the same. It's surfing. Because you watch surfing, you're like, that looks kind of activity. But you do it and you're like, this is exhausting. Is motocross pretty much the same way?
Yeah.
Because it looks cool. Like, hey, you ride motorcycles. Might be kind of hard,
But on the dirt, jumping the bike around, I mean, most bikes are around 250 pounds. So at least a full-size bike, to throw that around, it's nothing light, you know, and it's a lot of commitment to it, really, you know. It takes practice to get even just to ride the bike, you know, to be able to go through the gears on a bike and using the clutch, learning how to brake and stop safely. There's a lot of moving parts to motocross, really.
yeah, I imagine it's probably kind of like wrestling that fucking bike down the track.
Yeah, really, it really is. I mean, you got to grip with your knees and
Under a lot
use
of
your
power.
legs, and yeah, especially the bike I was just riding. It was a YZ250, so 252 stroke. They have a lot of torque.
It's a pretty big
Low
motor.
end, yeah. I mean, comparable to a 450 4-stroke, which is, I think they got around 50, 60 horsepower. So, I mean, you think some cars might have 180, 200, 300 horsepower, but they also weigh
Yeah, 50,
4,000 or 5,000 pounds, you know.
50 or 60 horsepower for a less than 300-pound bike's a lot.
It is.
It's
It
a
is.
lot.
I mean,
It's a ratio.
I could get up to probably 30 mile an hour in first gear on that bike. So it's like, and it's quick, you know, like within a few seconds, you're at
That's
more than
crazy.
fast to what you'd want to go.
In the dirt and in the bumps, man, and the hills and shit. That's wild. I want to give it a try. I've ridden a lot. I used to ride sport bikes, crotch rockets, whatever, when I was young, and that was fun, man. I still ride a Harley. I love motorcycles. I've never ridden one in the dirt. To give it
I'd
a
like
try.
to get a dual sport or like a supermoto. If you've ever heard of those, they're
Like a tour bike?
no more. It's like a motocross bike frame, but with street tires. So like you could, I've seen videos of people jumping them off stuff on the street. Like
I've seen a lot of those when I'm traveling in South and Central America. Maybe not as cool as those, but like they do that.
The touring bikes for sure. Even one of those would be
But
fun because
they
you can
take
just go off road.
a lot of small countries will have like little dirt bikes where they put street tires on them and stuff
Yeah.
because they're easy to get
Seen
around.
that in Europe. Yeah.
Yeah, man, that looks fun to me.
Oh yeah.
Just
For
ripping
sure.
through traffic up on sidewalks, not obeying
Yep.
any rules.
Yep.
No
I
one
mean,
can catch
that's
you.
what people do. It's,
Yeah.
That's the fun part of it. But
Dude, I love being in traffic in other countries. We get so used to things the way they are in America, but in some other countries, it's like somewhere between like it's the Wild West of driving, dude.
that's how it is
like
in Europe.
It's like
a
Mario
little bit.
Kart.
Yeah. People are just like, let me just squeeze right in here. Or,
Yeah.
but then again, they're also very aware of the pedestrians over there in Europe. I feel like, I mean, if you're going to walk across the road, people are going to stop their car to let you walk. Versus here in America, it's
Yeah.
like,
It's amazing there's not very
No.
many crashes
no, yeah.
compared to here. You'd think the opposite when you see it, like, oh, this is all going to be a huge crash, but it never is. And also, we have like a thing here called road rage. If somebody cuts you off or something, people freak out, you know?
You have to worry about someone pulling a gun out on you or something crazy. But
Yeah, dude, send one of them down to Peru or Ecuador to drive for a week. That'll
humble them up.
Yeah, that'll cure you of road rage. You get cut off every 5 seconds, man. Somebody's honking at you. Somebody else throws something at you.
I mean, they'll just flash their lights at you
Yeah.
to go around, or like just the simple. It's all different, you know.
Yeah.
The way they drive, the mannerism. Yeah.
Yeah. And we have a lot of street cops here enforcing traffic laws. I've been to a lot of countries, man. I just don't see traffic cops in other countries.
No, not really. I mean,
Not
they have
anywhere.
a lot of. There, they have a lot of speed check cameras, but as far as police, not really. And you don't see undercover cops like they're out to get you. You know. That's a whole different thing too. They're all like uniquely marked cars or vans that you can tell that's a police, you know.
Mm.
Versus here, you know, sometimes you don't know.
Yeah. That's probably true. The only place I've noticed traffic cops was in Tijuana, which I don't think they care about traffic laws. I think that's just the best way they could find people to rob.
Yeah.
Like, I was with my buddies, like, man, they're all in pickup trucks, the cops are. He's like, we're not stopping for them, so let's just hope they don't get behind us.
No kidding. Yeah.
I was like, okay. That's different. But I get it.
Yeah, for sure.
It's different
You wanna be
cultures, different
safe.
rules. You got to pay attention.
Well, and sometimes they're not actually police, or they're playing to be police, basically, acting like it.
Yeah, that's true. That's another whole list of things we take for granted in this country is a mostly, well, let's say it this way, our police force is based on the principles, ethical principles. They're based on a whole lot of different stuff than other countries. There's a tremendous amount of less corruption in those areas of stuff in our country, which you could definitely say our police stuff isn't perfect, but if you go to another country where it's way less perfect than ours, the first thing you'll say is, oh, thank God. Yeah, I got arrested in Colombia. Sort of. I don't know if you call it arrested. I got detained by police.
Yeah, I think you told that story to me. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah, it was a while ago, a couple years. My buddy had a knife on him, which the cops said was, we weren't doing anything wrong. We were just walking in the daytime. They said the knife was illegal, which I don't think it was. Yeah, and they just, basically, we had to pay him off or go to prison. That was it.
Yeah.
There was nothing else to it. There were no laws. There's no trial. There's no fair
fair
You can't. You don't.
judicial system
You
where
can't call
you go to
for
a judge and
yeah, you can't call for a supervisor. You can't put it on TikTok and have social justice. You're just either gonna pay
or be stuck.
yeah, or they're gonna capture you. I'm not knocking on Columbia. This can happen anywhere. Or they're just gonna bribe somebody your family or somebody
Yep.
to get you out if you refuse.
Heard that, yeah.
Yeah, so thank God for the honorable men and women in blue in our country.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, on that note, man, is there anything else you want to cover before we end it up? We went from
Yeah, we covered a lot.
to mushrooms to dirt bikes and corrupt cops and
Pharma. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
big
talked a
pharma,
lot
yeah.
about. I mean, yeah, I think that covered a lot.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you again.
Yeah,
man.
good to talk.
Yeah, I'm
It
glad you
is.
came and did it on this. I know maybe it's always daunting to ask people to get on video and mic and have conversations. So I'm glad you did it. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you
Appreciate
for
you.
the opportunity.
Yeah.